Hi, happy people. Welcome, welcome. So here's my, I'm going to say this is my second journal that I've made, but it's my first, what I call real, I guess, junk journal. I'm over the moon happy with it. You know, there's some things I left to still get done, but overall it's happy for me. It was joyful making it. And I want to share it with you all. So I'm going to do a flip through. Let's see. Let me give you some details of it. Let's see. The size of it is 8 3/4 by 5 1/4. It has a 3-inch curved spine, a 3-hole pamphlet stitch. It's got 3 signatures. It is a chunky chickie. It is the story of the strange disappearance of Arthur Cluck. I relate to this story. I mean, it was meant to be a mystery, but it's more, for me, it's more about Arthur, Arthur having, you know, his own unique way of showing up. And when he gets lost, that's how they find him, is by recognizing how Arthur does Arthur. But anyway, so let me show you I'll take the charm comes off. I had really fun. This is the first time I made a charm. So it's just a little chunky one. I've got 6 strings on it. I was definitely inspired by Carla Frizzell. I have 2 of her journals of which she put chunky charms on. Now, I did not copy her. I didn't even look at those, but I knew I wanted it to clank, and I used pieces that were important to me. I recently got these little serger tassels on a, let me put this down on here, actually, on a recent trip to Minneapolis. A lot of the pieces on here are vintage. I got vintage buttons, vintage game pieces, some vintage beads, some beads I got in Italy. There's a vintage domino. This is just a painty paper on a little round wooden piece, vintage game piece. And then there's some newer beads in here as well. Some beads from my mother-in-law's necklace. And yeah, I love the way it clanks. I love everything about it. Yeah, I'm happy with it. I'm happy with the way it clips on. So we're going to put that aside just so we can look at the journal. Now, I wanted to do a fancier tie, but to be honest, I just, at this point, like, I was so, like, pushing myself to get it done that I just thought, I really like this little plaid one. It's a pretty busy cover anyway. And I wanted to do a patchwork one, but then, you know, again, that's how Carla does her journals. And, you know, I want this to be a Khadijah journal, not a Carla journal. Not that I don't love Carla journals. I do, but, you know, the whole creative thing. Anyway, so, yeah, it's super chunky. It's actually fatter on the top than the front because I put a lot of thicker things on the top. So that's a learning curve for me. So anyway, let's get into it. So here's the cover. I just did a simple, this is actually a black and white drawing. The whole thing, this is about the forest. That's the other thing. For me, this became somewhat of a botanical, but about the forest, the wildflowers in the forest, the getting lost in the woods. Like, my house backs to the woods. I love the woods. I love the idea of being lost in the woods. Like, all of that is just something to me that made this more personal. And, you know, I made this journal for myself, not to sell. So that was a thing. And then all of the pages in here are actually from Arthur Cluck, except for these end pages I took out of this book, Andrew Henry's Meadow. And I'm a big fan of illustrations, and I love the black and white illustrations in here. And again, I wanted to bring that contrast in this book because to me, you know, it's a dark cover. The other thing that happened purely by accident is this is fall, and this looks like a fall journal. It has fall qualities in it. You know, it's got some little owls. I don't know, chickens are probably not fall, but to me, it feels like a fall journal, which, you know, I'm not so on the nose with fall. Like, I don't necessarily do journals. Not that I find anything wrong with them. I love them. They're just not my calling to do journals that are about Thanksgiving, so to speak. But this feels fall. I like to do, let me reframe that. I should zip my mouth and just do a flip through, right? I like fall. I like giving thanks. I just like to explore being a little bit, I guess, quirky or not so on the nose with my journals. Anyway, with my art in general. Okay, so let's move along. Anyway, so this is an illustration from that book. And then on my opening page, I made a big mess with the glue here. So I stuck a little quote on here and covered it up. You know, again, I have like one of those vinyl pockets here. And this was one of the first cards I made. And I did this with my stripy master boards that I made. Which, by the way, I love those. I love using them as backgrounds. And then on top of it, I have a piece of medical exam paper with splashes of black paint. So that's a painty paper on top. And they usually kind of disappear into the background when you get them wet. And then I just put a butterfly on there as a, and it's a journal card. I back with a file folder. Butterfly is the focal point. So that's my opening page. And then the next page, I have a lot of little vintage things in here. This is a vintage kid stencil from art class. And for me, I'm all about art. So I just tip that in with some tape. So you could journal underneath it, but it's got the stencils on both sides. I mean, you could play with the stencil if you want to, but I really like this little vintage piece. This is just a plain coffee dyed paper with a flinch tag. I actually got this idea from Jonna. And, you know, I did a little stamping. I think I got that stamp from her as well. And then the other side of the coffee dyed paper, these are my painty papers. I just cut them out. This is one of my forest flowers, I call them, which is painty paper, a little bit of fabric, some, I don't know what that is, some kind of netting, fiber, and a button. And then this is from Mrs. Wild Weeds, from my vintage, one of my vintage botanical books, another one. And then I had to tape it in here, so I just added some old tape. And then this here is a double pocket. This is wallpaper. This is craft paper that I did get out my sewing machine and sew in it. And I just made some journal cards to go in here. This one, actually, I'm pretty sure, I didn't make this one. I think this one came in the little package I bought from Darcy at Darcy's Mixed Media. But this one I made, I left it kind of plain. Journal, and then this one, and this one has a little pocket inside of the pocket, and it's just got some layering. This is my number 3811, so those are like numbers that I kind of put throughout the book. They have significance for me. And then this is just a plain page with a book page, and this is a fabric cluster from Carrie the Paper Monkey. And just left a little plain page here of scrap paper. Here's another pocket. Oh, this fell out. This was a journal card. I just added a little wood fairy. I put one of my vintage cards in there. And this is just a plain thing, which I can decorate and add on to it later. I just, at some point, right, you got to know where to stop and leave yourself something to do. Again, this is a coffee dyed paper that I did sew on part of it and added my painty papers. Then this this was on this ball pin. This was done by Carrie. I really like this idea. I want to copy this idea, and I just added some ribbon to go with my book. And this is, again, my coffee dyed paper. It is my own coffee dyed paper, this one. This is just from one of my vintage botanical books. And on the inside, I didn't want to put anything thick because I already have a whole bunch of thick stuff in here. So I just cut out little pieces of book page and, you know, distressed the ends and tied those on as little buttons because I figured they'd be nice and flat. And then here's another book page where I stamped it, did some little marks on it. Another painty paper page. As you can see, the stamping went through. This is supposed to be a version of Arthur. Here's another one. I added a vintage feed sack yo-yo and one of the little flowers I got from Jen, and then I just stuck this in here again. I haven't done anything with it, so there's room for me to do something with that. Book page, another one of those really cute little fabric clusters from Carrie. And then here I just added a stamp. Here is a little paper clip. This is one of my forest flowers. I didn't add any beads on this one because it was getting too thick, but I left the strings because I liked them. These are just 2 cards I made. This is actually the positive side of the cutout I did for my recent fall ATC. This is just the part that I cut out. There's room for journaling. And then this is, you know, just book pages with my painty paper on it. And then I just put a focal point on there. Again, these are my wild weeds, wild grass. Another painty coffee dyed paper. I left this one completely plain. And then I did a fabric flip here. And I have room to journal underneath that. And then this is the last page of my first signature. Again, this is another of my stripy strips masterboard. I did some painty papers on here, and then I added a focal point. And then this one, I can't remember who I watched. I think it was Meg do this, but I just threw some fabric together kind of in the colors and made a stitched patchwork card. Okay, and then this is one of my forest flower, one of my hidden paper clips. Again, I added trim on the first page of each signature, and this is some old cardstock or scrapbook paper that I had. And again, I used the paper clip to hold this on so I could both journal underneath, journal on top of this paper. Another one of my weeds. Like, I love this. This is just from one of those Reader's Digest books. So there's room. This actually is one of the other books that I took. It's a kid's drawing. I thought it was woodsy. It was cute. Coffee dyed paper. Did some stamps on here. This is my stamp came through. This is my painty paper on coffee dyed paper. Again, here's another one of my forest flower, what do you call it? Paper clips. And then I made this card out of the book page. This is painty paper on top. Why do I use painty paper instead of just stamping? Well, you could stencil it. You could paint it. But what I like about the painty papers, number one, I love to make them. But you can move them around and play with where you want them and see exactly what they're going to look like, which is a little bit different than stenciling. It maybe gives you a little bit more control. And I also just like the layers of it. It's also done with acrylic, which is different than working just with the distressed inks. And this is a antique, I forget what they call this page, but I love it. It's like onion paper. I just added a little stamp to this. Book page. And this, I made little pockets out of the envelope half, which is here. And then I have these vintage tree cards. I stuck those in there because I just thought they were kind of cute. This is on a shorthand page. Now, the shorthand page got really weak, which I discovered afterwards once I put this on. And so this is the envelope. I decorated it with some of my, this was one of these 1-cent ones. And I stamped it first. And then I did some little kind of structured collage on top of it. I like the structure on top of the stamp part underneath. And then I just stuffed some papers in here. I think I've got a card. I've got a couple of these little quotes from the Bible and a little note paper, and then this is just a card to play with and make a decorate it if I want. But again, that's just a little hidden space. And then I put this on here, which this is like from the inside of my Victorian one, and I really like it because you can write on it, but it's also a little bit of color background. And I put it on, I just glued it on at last because this page was too weak. It was flopping. And then this is one of those vintage pages as well, vintage botanical pages, but I added some paper to it and made it into a pocket. And inside I have some vintage wallpaper that I added a card to. This goes in this little, for, a journal card. And then this is a vintage postcard that I recently got that I could journal on if I wanted to. Again, this is another one of my forest flower paper clips. There's the other side of it. And then here's another pocket I did on this side, which is another one of those collages. I cut these out of, I can't remember what the book was, but I just cut out these little squares, and there was actually, this is about a sword fern, and most of these are ferns, so I thought it was kind of fun. And the little tab on here, I love this tab. This tab was on the selvage of a piece of fabric, and it says "Say It with Flowers," and I just thought it was so cute, and I love the little polka dots, so I felt like it worked perfect in here. That was one of my favorite discoveries. And then here is the paper again. Oh, and you saw in the middle of my thing, I did these again because they were thin, because I had way too much bulk. Let's see, this is another shorthand, so I added this side pocket, and this is from that other book, the black and white wood drawings, which is what I have on the front of the book. And then I made these little cards and just added them in. They don't really have a lot to them. I mean, I can add more to them and build them up, but they're just kind of plain right now. And then here's another paper clip. This is a vintage greeting card that I can journal on. I'll let this page plain. There's another one of my paper clips. Another painty paper, coffee dyed paper. This is just a pocket. I just backed it. It was a picture from one of my books. Just backed it with some file folder. And this is a painty paper that I added in with some washi tape. And this is just paper clipped on. I'm not sure if I'm going to keep this in here because it's got a big button and it's pretty bulky. And then here's another little up pocket. And this came from, I think, Tracy made it. I'm not sure, but somebody in my ATC made it. So I stuck that in here. And then I made this card. This is actually home, which is, this is Arthur Kluck's home. And that's the end. I left it plain. This is another one of my forest flower paper clips. Here is another uptuck. I just put in a piece of, stationery, and also the rest of that same card. This is from that Victorian flower garden. I have 2 of those books, and I really liked it because it was colorful, but also plain enough to write on. This is just a typing page. This is scrapbook paper that I did sew, and then I made this card out of an image from a Pooh book. I probably could stitch around that, but I made this over the last minute. There's Arthur Kluck when he's mixed up with all the other chicks. Another one of my paper clips, and this is also a vintage postcard. This is just a journaling card. Another little book page. Let's see what else we got here. This is a painty paper. I left room to do something on there. Scrapbook paper. Just stitch this together here, and this is the middle of the last signature, and there's a card I made with my painty papers and just layered some stuff. This is more like other people's style that I was trying out, not really mine, but I do like the stitching around it. I like this one, which is not completely finished. As a matter of fact, I didn't even glue this on, I paper clipped it on. But again, I have one of my home drawings, and then I have the woods drawn on it, which again is reflective of me from my home. So I kind of like to tie things together that way, but I just didn't finish that. And then this I know came from Tracy in the ATC, so I put that in here. I didn't get much of her in my other book. And then this is another one of the patchwork cards that I made. And again, I did the same thing with all of the insides because I just did not need any more bulk. This was a note card, I think they're Project Life cards or whatever, and I just took a picture out of one of my books and added it that was of the woods. That was a little journaling. Another painty paper. This is a little pocket from the book, and again, 2 journaling cards that are not finished, but we can always add to those and play with them and make them more on scrapbook paper. This was interesting. So this is a piece of fabric. It's very hard now, and I messed it up. It was like the silky material, and it was embroidered, and I cut it to be part of my my fabric, my, what do you call that? My fabric flip. And I got glue on it, so it was like all messed up. So what I did was then took my matte medium and put it over the whole thing, and it made it hard, kind of. And so then I backed it onto file folder and made it into like a little tuck. And then this, I love this. This is like a vibe I really like. And I did this, I think I put some of these in my recent botanical kits that I did, the paper kits. I love this black and white. I mean, I could add more to it, but sometimes it's nice just to have like something simple. Again, this is bold, it stands out. This is background, this is more neutral. I like the differences that it creates. And I do like this kind of drawing. And this is from just a little old vintage Reader's Digest book. I think it's Reader's Digest. I don't know. It's just a little teeny one. Anyway, I don't think it's in here. I think it's in another room. And then again, from that same gardening book or woodsy book, some note paper. I forget what you call this. There's a name for it. It's not ledger. It's another name. I can't think of it right now. Then here's an envelope I made, just practicing folding with the same paper from my gardens one. I don't actually have anything in this one, and I will put something in it that needs to be worked on. How about that? No, that's too big. Let's see if I can find one. I will put something in it, and then I will decorate it later. There we go. So there's that. Music page. And then this I also made into a pocket. And inside of here I used another Flinch card. And this is actually a note from my beloved, my husband, that I treasure. So I just put that in here, and I will journal on that. And then this is a copy of a picture, and She's Lost in the Woods, which is kind of how I feel is, you know, has resonance for me. But I love this picture, and it's a picture of a book. I should do a view of it. I got it when I was in Italy, and it's all children's drawings in it. I don't think I've done a video on it. I may do it at one point because it's one of my favorite books. It was a vintage book, and it's all in Italian, and all the drawings in it are done by kids. So I put that in here. And then this is the last inside page. This is a napkin. I got this napkin from Carrie, the paper monkey. And then I just played around and did some little cards in here. This is like my own little drawing, and then I just outlined it, stitched on it. And then this one, not really crazy about, but I was playing with layers, and it doesn't even have a back, but this is on wallpaper. So I just didn't do any wrapping paper in this one, but I did wallpaper, played a little bit with napkins, painty papers, definitely a lot of book pages, a lot of file folder. And then this is the last page, and this one I put a piece, I backed it. This is actually a one of my linens I got from my big linen haul. And then I made this little tag, and that's essentially supposed to be like an Arthur Cluck. Made that card, and then this is the last page of the book, and that's the back. And I was going to cover this over, but I've left it right now, thinking it's fine. And I did put some more trim on the back of the last page, just to kind of bookend it. And that's my journal. And she's a fat one, but I am pretty happy about her. Let me know what you guys think. I'm going to move on to my next set. I'm pretty sure I'm going to be doing a series, and I may squeeze in a little Christmas daily or some little Christmas one as well. So we'll see. I mean, I want to visit them and see which ones inspire me the most right now, and then I'll let you know what I'm working on. But I so appreciate you showing up here today. I hope I didn't take too long with this, but, and you know, maybe I'll do a quick flip through on, you know, silent, so people could just enjoy that too, but I don't know. Anyway, thank you guys. If you're not doing something creative today, I hope that you find yourself doing something that brings you so much joy. All right, thank you. Bye-bye.